So I just got to the end. I got the credits of God of War Ragnarok. Um, I'm gonna say right off the front, I really like this game. I thought it was okay. Well, let me say this. I really enjoyed this game. It's been at least from this year, for sure. This year, this has probably been the only game that has took away this much of my attention. It comes to a time where I have the time to do it, so that definitely plays a big part of it. But I was playing this game every day, pretty much the only game that I played. There was like one or two times I stopped and played something different, but this is like the only game I mained like the whole way through, and I was spending like I want to say like 5+ hour sessions doing it. And it took me about a week. I think it came out on Wednesday. I think it came out on Wednesday. So yeah, so about a week to finish. So yeah, it was very good. Okay, so I'm gonna go into some things. I just want to talk a little bit about it. I thought about it for a little bit. I beat it like about 2 or 3 hours ago, and without going into any spoilers first, I just want to talk about the game. Um, this, I guess, be warned. There are some things that I might bring up that are still quote unquote spoilery. There are some big things that I'm definitely going to leave out 100%. But if you're, I would, if possible, go in playing the game knowing as little as possible. That's what I would say. They do some really cool things that I just won't mention. So yeah, I would go into it as blind as possible. So if you are playing the game, if you're currently playing the game, or you plan on playing the game pretty soon here, I would just like not listen to anything I'm saying. And then if you care at all, then come back and listen. That's what I did for all the stuff that I did. I went into this game watching the last trailer that they showed a few months ago. It was the one with the arrow that they showed. I'm just gonna say that in case you didn't see it. And I really liked that trailer. It was a very good trailer. People really liked it. I I'll save it for later if you have seen that trailer in like a spoiler section. But yeah, so gonna just talk about the game for a little bit, spoiler free, no spoilers. In my first impressions before I played the game, and even after I played the game, I was feeling, hey, this probably is going to be more of the same game. It's probably just going to be 2018 God of War with new stuff added, and not spoiling anything. It is that. It really is. If you liked God of War 2018, you will love this game. It's only positive. It's only more. It's only more. I don't think there was anything that they added to it that was detrimental from the last game. So there's nothing I can think of that they added different that changed up how it was last game, and it actually made it worse. I'm pretty sure everything they did was like spot on. There are very, very nitpicky things that I would say kind of not ruin it, but what's the word? There are very small things that stop it from being like almost easily like a perfect game. There are some very slow moments where people might say that this is because of what's it called? Because of it being on PS4, which is possible. People like to throw around when the PS5 came out. It's like, oh, with the PS5 SSD and the loading times and all that shit, we won't have to have those things where you have like small people like bending over small corners, or like specifically in like 2018, every time he had to like lift a rock and there was a small animation of Atreus going under the rock and him going under the rock, or them going through a small like what's it called? A small crevice to like go through. There are a lot of those, just like there was a lot of those in 2018. But that's like the thing that I can see the most. Moving throughout the world can be, when you're not doing something, can be pretty slow. That's probably the one thing that I would say as a negative. When I have finished an area and there's not much for me to do, there's not much for me to like fight, and I'm just traversing it, whether I'm on like a boat or something as well, it's just really slow. And that's probably like the biggest thing that I would say was a detriment to me. But to be fair, it was similar to that in 2018. So they could have maybe made it a bit more. I wonder what they could have done. I feel like if they would have increased movement speed outside of combat, it would have been okay, or the movement speed or the speed that you are when you're like in the boat or something. I think would have been nice. But I think for the most part, now that I'm thinking back, I'm trying to remember how it was in 2018, in the sense of like from point to point, how much like wait downtime there was. I feel like I feel like things in this one are a bit more condensed, where I did feel like every time I was doing something, every time I was going somewhere, I was already doing something in that process. So there wasn't too much downtime, but when there was, it felt very sluggish. It felt very slow. Like when I wasn't doing something, I felt that. And that was mostly when I was doing the extra stuff. When I was doing story content, I didn't feel that. It was very rare when I felt that. Most of the story things felt very, very nice. There was always talking going on. There was something interesting being said. I know people said it with the last one. You get that same feeling like when you're traveling and they're having a story. You don't want to like you're at your destination, but you don't want to get off the boat or you don't want to leave until they're done telling their story. There's still all of that, and that's all great. I'm trying to think of what else I could talk about without going into spoilers. If I'll save that for a spoiler. I'll save that for a spoiler. Or for like, I'll have another section. I'll have another section where there's like mechanic spoiler, I guess. So, oh shit, fuck. The story is very good. I know people are saying, I'll say that also for that. I think the combat's very good. They didn't change too much of it from 2018. I would say the core of it is still the same. So if you like that combat for 2018, they add a few new things that I'll talk about later, and it all flows very well together. There was never a time. I'm trying to think. I don't think there was ever a time where I felt cheated when fighting something. I will mention there was one boss specifically that gave me the most amount of trouble. Well, actually, there was one boss and then one like fight sequence that gave me the most amount of trouble. That I'll probably bring up just for like a minute. But overall, it felt very rewarding when I did things. It made me want to use all of the things. I don't know when people get into this, like when you're playing a very action fighting game. I don't know if the average person like just gets into the flow of things, of where it's like, hey, this thing works, and I'm just gonna keep doing this the whole time. There's one thing, you know how in the old game in 2018 there was like runes that you would have, like you would have. I think if you hold down like R1 or L1 and then R1 or R2, you would do a like a light attack, a light special like mage attack, runic attack, I think is what they're called. A light runic attack or a heavy runic attack. Those are still in the game. I will say there are some that feel like very, very strong that I just kind of stuck with. But other than that, from the combat aspect, I felt like I wanted to use everything. All the abilities that you get, all the different like stat changes you can do. I felt very inclined to test those out. And I liked swapping between all those stuff and like doing different things. So I felt very inclined to do that. So that was cool. What else was there? Oh, very similar from 2018. So I'm mostly saying things that are similar right now. Very similar upgrade system, like armor and equipment stuff that you would get. That's all very similar from 2018. And without going into spoilers, I think I'll stop it there. The last thing I will say is that I think this game, since so much of it is very similar to 2018, I think the thing that it really hinges on about making this game very good is the story. And I really like what they did. I think it was a very well done. There are some things I'll talk about in the spoiler section, but for the most part, if you were engrossed into that story in 2018, you will be engrossed into this story as well. I think probably I would say more so. I would say more so. I'm not going to go into why, but at least not yet. But I would say compared to 2018, this story definitely I think raises a bit higher. The last thing I'll say is if you are currently playing God of War 2018 again to get ready for this, you might want to hold off. I don't know how I would feel if I would have played 2018 again because of how similar the game does mechanically feel. Because it feels very mechanically the same, I think the story would have kept me going, but I don't think I would have done as much side content. I think I would have probably just mainlined the story and would have let the side content just like move over, and I maybe would get back to where I do it later. But because I haven't played in a long time, and I really like these, like I really like this type of game, I was able to like go straight for all the side stuff and do everything that I wanted to do because it just felt so good to play, and I wasn't tired of that combat yet. I could definitely sense that if I played like a whole 15-hour 2018 campaign again, then I could feel myself probably being a little bit more, maybe halfway through this game, feeling like, I don't know about this, because I just went mainline. I was just like, okay, I just want to see the story at this point. So yeah, so I'm gonna stop it there, spoiler free version, and now I'm gonna go into some mild spoilers. So mild spoilers first, and then the big stuff. So midsection, I'm not gonna go into any specifics, but I am gonna say that some things that you might not want to hear if you don't want to know anything. So like the one thing for sure I'm gonna start with playtime. Um, I think when this game was being coming out, I think I heard somewhere that they thought it was gonna be like a 20 or a 25-hour game, like maybe between 18 and 20 hours, somewhere in there. I don't know how they calculated that. I played on the second hardest difficulty, so not the hardest, but the one right below it. So I think it was like easy, normal, hard, very hard. I think. I don't know. It was the one below the Give Me God of War or something. So the one below that, I want to say the second hardest. And I put in, when I rolled credits, I think I put in like 44 hours or 43 hours. And that was with doing a lot of side content, but not all of the side content. I will say, once you beat the game, there is new actual stuff. Once you beat the game, there is actually like new things that are added, things that you could not have done earlier. Um, so there's definitely more for me to do, and I don't know how much more that is. So I would say I probably did up until the new content was added. So like we're getting to the end of the game. I want to say I probably did. I would say probably 75 to 80% of the side content. I know because there's a few more collectibles for me to get. There's like one side quest I think I still have to complete technically, and that's more of like a bug. Um, and there are, oh wait, no, there's like two side quests because of the one of them. Okay, yeah, okay. So these are minor spoilers. Little things to know. Muspelheim, that's the one with all the, that's like the fire arena thing. That is here again. It is also an arena, so you do arena fights. I still have to finish the last fight of that, which there might be more after I do it. I actually don't know. And then there was like similar to the Valkyries. I won't say what they are, but similar to the Valkyries, there's something like that. And I didn't do all of them yet. I did like I want to say 8 of them, and there's more than 8. I'll say that there's more than 8. So I did most of those. I did a bit of the collectibles. There are, surprisingly, I'm trying to remember. There's like a good. I'm trying to think of each realm that you go to. Is there something? There's a good bit of stuff that is like a collectible thing, that you then turn in. So they brought the ravens back. So they're the ravens, and you have to get all those. There's like, I'll just say, because I don't think there's a big spoiler. There's like 48 of them or 42, something like that. But I need to do all those, and it sounds like there's something at the end of that, so I have to finish those. I didn't finish those because those are just a hassle to go through. And yeah, so I did most of the side content before the new stuff came, and with the new stuff that they just added, I want to say they probably added another. I don't know. They added a good couple of new quests, so I need to go do those. I don't know how much longer that's going to be. And also, when I finished the game, I wasn't even max level, so I think max level is 9 for gear score because it goes off of gear again. So you level up your gear, and then once your gear is at a certain level, you get that item level kind of a thing. And I want to say I was at 8, like 8.5, or like a little bit below 8.5. And that's because I was missing like a weapon attachment or weapon upgrades for something, which I don't. I probably could have gotten them all up to level 9 if I would have done more of the side content, but I didn't. I just didn't. I was at. It got to a point where I'm like, I need to see the end of this game. Okay. And the last thing before I go into like major spoilers, when you are getting near the end of the game, it is very obvious that you are about to do the end of the game. It is very, very obvious. You should probably, at that point, you have seen something that happens with how you play the game. You've seen something happen, and I'm not going to say specifically what it is, but Just so you know, if you like what you're doing at that moment, you should finish everything from a, not like a story perspective, but from a, I don't know how to say it, from like a feeling when you play the game kind of perspective, because there's a change that happens after you beat the game that, to my knowledge, you cannot change. So I would suggest at this point, I'm a little upset that I didn't do everything, but if you can, I would do all the side content that you have available to you prior to the end of the game, prior to this thing that you do before the end of the game. Because once you go to this thing, and it's very obvious that you're going to do this thing, it's 100% obvious. You will know 100% that you're about to do this thing, and that you should probably do other things. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. So now, if you come this far, I'm gonna go into heavy, heavy spoilers. I'm not gonna hold anything back when I talk about this game now. Wait, shit. I didn't mention all the negative things. Oh well. If you're I don't know. Yeah, I'll go into the negatives in the spoiler section. So we're in heavy spoilers right now. The one thing that I'm sure all of us were expecting this, and we didn't get it. You do not get to use Molnar. I'm super surprised. I could have sworn we were building up to using Molnar, but you do not. You don't. Big sad. But you know what? I'm actually okay with that. So this game goes on for a very long time, similar to God of War. I feel the God of War 2018, where you're playing with the axe like pretty much a good portion of the game, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I'm getting my fucking blades. That shit was cool. They do something similar here, where there's a good portion of the game where you are just using the axe and the blades for like the whole way through. And I want to say it was probably around like 30 hours in. And again, I'm doing a lot of side content. I want to say it was around 30 hours in, or maybe it was 28. I'm trying to remember when I did my save, when I got it. You do a quest where you get an item, and you don't know enough about what you're doing. You're just going to create an item to do something. Oh yeah, I'm not spoiling it, right? You're going to create an item to kill someone. Um, and there's this really interesting thing, because at this time, Atreus is not with you, and there's this item that you would have gotten like a lot of information, because Atreus would have been questioning about it, and they even make a joke about it when they like, what is this thing? And then Atreus is back, and he's like, yo, what's that thing? He's like, well, you weren't here to ask questions about it, so fuck you. We don't know the story about this thing. You get it later, like they bring it up again. But they go through this elaborate things like getting this item, and then it turns out to be they turn it into a ring that like turns into a spear, and it makes multiple spears that you can like chuck. So I can throw spears at people and just regenerates the spear over and over and over again. And it's awesome. It is so cool. You get this thing, and it feels. I love spears, so I was super ecstatic at this point. The fact that I'm thinking, okay, we've been using these two weapons this whole time. We have to get a third weapon. There's no way we're not getting a third weapon in this game. I feel like it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And this whole time I'm expecting it to be Molnar. I'm like, oh, we're going to get Thor. Like, there's going to be a big climactic, like, middle section of this game where we fight Thor again, and we're going to kill him, and we're going to take his hammer. But no, doesn't happen. Does not happen. But you get this cool spear. And I really like the spear. Because I guess thinking back, if we would have gotten Molnar, I think Molnar's a little too similar to the axe, where a lot of the powers would have been very similar, but just lightning. And that's why a lot of people thought, oh, we're probably going to get it, because they added the new status effect thing. So we had ice, fire. You have the other ones, like there's shock, which could have been for the electricity thing with Molnar, and then you had like poison, and you get new ones like sonic and blight and all this stuff. So they could have. Everyone thought you were gonna get Molnar. I wasn't the only one to think this. Everyone thought it, but you get this spear, and this spear is fucking awesome. I love it. I think it's so much fun. It's not nearly as powerful. It definitely has less power, but it has a lot of stagger, and the abilities that you get with it are fucking cool. There's like one heavy one where you just throw it up in the air, and like thousands of them come raining down on them, and then you have the ability where you hit triangle on this thing, and so you drop a number of spears, or you throw spears at people, or you impale people with spears, and then that spear stays in them, because you can, with the ring, generate more. And when you generate more, once there's like, I think you start with being able to put 6 out, and you get a little bar that tells you like, okay, you have six spears out right now, impaled into things or people. and then you can hit triangle or hold it down for more power to detonate those spears. So you could rain down all these spears. There's a bunch on the ground, and then you fucking hit the hit triangle, and they all detonate, and then like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. The spear is probably the axe is the most useful. I think I really like the axe. Just using it feels the most right. But I love the attacks and the cool shit that you can do with the spear. I think the spear had some of the coolest, some of the most fun runic abilities, and some of the most like interesting things I could do about it. It was very strong because it was very good at staggering people, and it felt really good to like charge up a spear chuck, throw it at them, and it does like a spiral thing, and it like does damage. It's so cool. It just felt really good. So that's cool. And that is the third weapon you get, and the only extra weapon you get. So throughout the game, you are with the axe, the blades, and then the spear. And it's just cool. And it does feel right to give Kratos a spear again, because apparently like that's a big thing for Kratos, being like from Olympia. Ugh. Big Roman weapon, all that shit. So that's cool. So that's the first big spoiler I wanted to go into. And that's probably not the one a lot of people are going to open with. Probably the big spoiler people are going to bring up is that you do play as Atreus in this game. And the Atreus sections are okay. There's one Atreus section that is just awful. It is the worst part of the game, and it's the thing that I mentioned earlier. The thing that I hated the most, like the biggest nitpick of this game that I had was the fact that there's sections where you're just walking and you're not doing much. And there's a whole section with Atreus where you're in Jotunheim, or I think you're in Jotunheim. You're in the giant place, and you meet this other character that they show in the trailers. And there are fighting sequences with this person, but then there's a part where you are on this like yak thing, and you're going through the water collecting fucking seeds, and I absolutely hate it. It was awful. It was so boring. Most of it wasn't like there wasn't really much challenge to the puzzles. It was very, very boring and very, very slow. Very slow. But whenever you got into the combat sections, it was all fine. I think Atreus had his own tree, and it was really interesting because when you had Atreus on your side with Kratos, you had a skill tree for him. It was pretty lackluster. There wasn't much going on. And then they later on add more to him. But when you look at it, when you're as Kratos, you don't see all the things that you can do, and they change the titles, and not the titles, they change the description of them when you're as Atreus and you go into that section and you look at it, and then you can see like, oh, this skill does one thing when I'm as it's like a passive thing when I'm with Kratos, but when I'm just Atreus, then it's like, oh, he actually has like a combo that you can do, or he can slow down time when he dodges and stuff like that. So that's really cool. That was really well done. So people were speculating that you were going to play as Atreus in this game, and they mostly thought because, oh, you might take over and you will be Atreus now and not as Kratos. So you do that a few times throughout the game where you're just Atreus in his perspective, because he does things with Asgard and with Odin, and you get paired up with other people. Specifically, you get paired up with Thor once. You get paired up with the giant person that you meet, the giant friend, and with like Thor's daughter. I think it was someone else. I'm trying to think. Was there another person you get paired up with? I think those are the three that you get paired up with. And when you're with, you get a sword. You get Atreus gets like a floating sword thing that he can control. So that counts as like his partner at the time, where you hit like square or you have it do special attacks. So that's kind of cool. Oh shit. So yeah, so you play as Atreus. That's another big thing. Those parts, for the most part, were fine. I thought they were going to do something where at the end of the game, which is why I pushed further to the end of the game, I thought they were going to do something crazy where I could swap on the fly. The fact that they gave Atreus special abilities when he's passive and when he's active, I thought, oh, maybe they did that with Kratos, where I'll be able to choose who I want to play as in different sections. And I would have been like, oh, that's fucking cool. But no, sadly you can't. Unless I'm missing something. Maybe there's something I'm missing. That is not a thing. Now, I noted that there's points and times where Atreus is not with you. When Atreus is not with you, you have Freya. Freya joins your team. So there's a big story thing where you have to help Freya do shit, and you help her free her, and then she joins your side. And so she has her own skill tree. It's similar to Atreus. You never play as Freya, though, but it's similar to her. So, or similar to Atreus, where she shoots arrows, and you have two different arrows that you select between. And then she has like passive abilities that kind of just go through that help you take care of enemies. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. That was interesting. And What else was there that I want to try and go over? Those are like the two big things that I wanted to hit on. Oh, now I remember. Now we're talking about spoilers. I don't like how the trailer showed. I guess something that wasn't. It was very late in the game. It's when he shoots the arrow and he saves. What's it called? The two wolves that like chase the sun and the moon. That's very late in the game. Same with the Fenrir thing, because you see Fenrir at the very beginning and Fenrir dies, which is, I think, I said in my early impressions, I think it's just really cheap. I think that's cheap. Just opening up with a pet dying, and it's very like very sad. They do really well with animating the dog to be sad and all that shit. But they bring Fenrir back, and it sucks that in the trailer you realize that Fenrir is still alive, because I think he even says Fenrir. Like you hear him like look at a big giant dog, and you hear him say Fenrir, and then it's not until way later that once they say that there's a soul in his knife, you instantly know it's Fenrir. Like it has to be him. We know this at that point. That's fucking weird. Man, this is reminding me of a bunch of things now that I want to talk about. And then two, when you meet Garm, which is like the hell dog, it's like, oh, well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna put Fenrir inside Garm. That's what's gonna happen, because we saw the trailer with the big dog. It's like, well, that's Garm, and he called him Fenrir, so that means Fenrir's in the knife, and we know Fenrir's gonna be putting that soul shit. So it was very easy. I don't know how easy that would have been put together if I did not watch the trailer, because there's this whole thing with souls. The giants can like take souls out of people and then put them into things. Found out that all the giant souls are in marbles. That's all fine. I don't really care about that. But they do something. They do two things that just, maybe we find out more in the post game. Maybe we do. Maybe we find out some of this information. But there was something that they showed when you were Atreus, and then late in the game when you fight at Asgard with the big world serpent. They say that there's something weird or different about him. They don't really go into what. They just say he looks different. They see something's wrong, and then he's at the fight, and then he just kind of disappears one time. And I think they even talked about how there's something where they say that someone like sends the world serpent back in time or forward in time or something. I don't know, but there's a point when Atreus puts the soul of a giant inside of a snake, and then randomly the giant character that we met says, hey, that giant soul that you put into a snake, that snake is now abnormally large for some reason. I'm thinking, wait a minute, did you create the world serpent? Is this like, are we having some weird time travel thing that's going on? But it never gets talked about again. They just mention it. It's like, hey, by the way, you put that giant soul in that snake, and then that snake turned huge for some reason, and we never see it again. So I don't know why they even brought it up. So I don't know what the point of that was. It definitely sounds like they're leading into another game, though, because at the end of this game, so remember when I said you want to do everything side content? What I was trying to say is, since you switch back and forth between Freya and Atreus, you don't choose those switches. It just happens because of the story. So whoever you're with in that moment, that's who you have, and you can't switch back. At the end of the game, Atreus and Kratos, big surprise, none of them die. They defeat Destiny. Destiny doesn't unfold them and all that shit, so not dead. Kratos survives. Atreus survives. All's hunky-dory. But Atreus apparently feels the need to go and do a new mission, and this mission is to find and revive the giants. Okay. Sounds like that could be a sequel. That could be a game that they go into next. They've fleshed out Atreus. You've played as him, and now you can play as him in like his own game. So he goes off, and he's like, I have to do this alone. So he goes off, and it literally ends with him leaving, and then Kratos looking at a Merle, and the Merle's like the things that you've seen that like predict the future or something, or like say the future. And it shows his story through up to where they defeat Odin, and then at the very end it shows like people worshiping a statue of him. So he is going to be, quote unquote, like the God of War here, and be like seen as like a good god, similar to how Tyr was seen. And then he goes out, talks to Freya and Mimir, and they're like, okay, we gotta go do this shit. And then they go. So now, for the rest of this post game, unless something changes, I haven't looked it up, I haven't seen it, you just have Freya. Even in the like little card that comes up after you beat the game, and you go out and it says, hey, post Ragnarok, post the game, the like ending of the game. You have to do these things. There's still much for Kratos, Freya, and Mimir to do. They don't mention Atreus, so I'm assuming Atreus is just Gonzo. We don't get to use him ever again unless you do New Game Plus or go back to a save. So if you want to do everything post before post game, all the side content before the new shit with Atreus, then you have to do it before you do the last segment of the game. So, and that's something that I wish I would have done because I probably would have preferred that from like a story, from like a feeling aspect. That probably been better. Even though anything that Atreus can do as with Kratos, so can Freya. So you're not losing anything mechanically. It just feels different. Okay, how long have I talked? I've talked for like 30 minutes about this. I don't want to make this any longer. I think I'll stop here. I think this game is very, very good. Um, there are some, like I said, nitpicky things that I could go through. It being slower during some sections. Um, it would have been nice to maybe have one other weapon type. That would have been nice. But I am perfectly okay with what we have with the weapons. The only thing that gives me pause is the fact of how similar other than that new weapon, the combat is almost identical. You're still doing like different types of elemental damage. You're still doing the light and heavy runic attacks. You have a relic. I can't remember if you had a relic attack in. I think you did. I want to say you had a relic attack in 2018. But it's where you like when you hold for the relic attacks, it's L1 plus R1 or R2, and in this it's L1 plus like circle to do light attack to do a relic attack. But since you have two relic, so you have one relic attack, you have two runic attacks for each weapon, so that's 6 runic attacks, and you have like different uh, light and heavy attacks for each weapon. So that's a lot of options. But because you had two of the exact same like attacks, like almost all of the blade and axe attacks, I want to say are almost like 1-to-1 similar from 2018. The light and runic ones, there's some new ones, there's some old ones. But I'm almost certain, I would have to go back and check, but I feel like the combos and everything were pretty much 1-to-1 for those. So the only new weapon attack stuff was with the spear. But you could say that when you play as Atreus, that's a whole new weapon style thing, which it was when. So sure, that's another thing to add on there. But it would have been nice to have just one other weapon to switch to that had its own combos. I think I would have preferred that. And the last thing I'll say is from a story perspective, while I really enjoyed the story, I liked it a lot. I think the ending suffered from it being a a fairly long game on by my perspective. I think originally they were saying they were going to split this up in two, but they decided to put everything together. I think the ending could have been more um fleshed out if they would have separated the two, but I don't know how that would have looked. I'm trying to imagine. I think there is a key moment in the middle of the game where they could have probably cut it. It actually would have been probably 70% through the game. And they would have added more to that 30% to make it like more fleshed out. But because the last couple missions, story missions specifically, that you do after a fairly pivotal moment. Oh, I told you, yeah. So spoiler still. I'm gonna have a thing that says spoiler at this point. Brock is the only main character that dies, and holy shit, it changes Sindri completely. You don't get any resolution to this, at least not yet. Maybe there's post game stuff. There is possible something there for post game, but there is no. After that moment, there is no stopping, and there is no like going back, and there's no like resolution to that at all. Just Brock's dead, like Gonzo, and Sindri you never make up with. So that's a big sad. I'm sure they'll build off that. If they do another game, which I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. It'd probably be follow Atreus. I think Kratos is probably done at this point. But I'm trying to think where they would have cut it to like expand it to be a third game and kept Ragnarok being the very last segment. And this is all like build up to that. Because once that happens, they do a couple things. There's a big quote unquote twist, which is kind of, I don't know how I feel about it. The twist is specifically the tier that you saved at the beginning of the game hasn't been tier at all. It's been Odin this whole time, which is kind of lame. I think a little lame, just a little. And then everything just starts going downhill. They were building up Thor and his family as a big thing. That kind of felt heavy-handed. but it could have been better if they spent more time on it. There's like three or four scenes with that happening. There was some characters like from Midgar, not Midgar, from Asgard that were just like mortals that they showed like a few times. That was random. He was like in two scenes, but they tried to make him like a friend of Atreus. That was And how they go from and how they like get some of the things from Ragnarok. They literally have like things where they talked about like, oh, this is how Ragnarok's gonna go, and then they like sidestep and be like, wait, we don't have time for this. We're just gonna do something else. We're gonna like try and change it. I'm like, okay. So yeah, that's probably the only thing I would say. That's probably another like the two things. So we got two things that are kind of iffy, like big things, not counting the weapon things. I think the weapon thing's like a small nitpicky thing that just like feels good for me. The two things that I'll mention is the the sluggishness that can happen when you're just exploring the world, when you're not fighting, you're just doing random shit around there. That can be bad. And then the pacing for the last like 10% of the game, where everything for the Ragnarok event feels very rushed. The fight for the Ragnarok felt very good up to Thor, because you fight Thor near the end. Like, he's the second to last boss. Um, the whole Thor fight, awesome. Fuck, I forgot to mention the Thor fight in the beginning. You fight Thor at the very beginning of the game. He's like the first boss that you fight, and it's like going off of at the end of 2018 when you went to your house and Thor comes down and you see the hammer. He's like, "Who are you?" And he shows his hammer, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's Thor." That happens in like in the first hour or two in the game, and that's fucking awesome. That fight was fucking so cool. It makes a like a frozen lightning bolt that stays in the game for the rest of the game in Midgard. It's just always there. That shit's awesome. That was a great opener. It was so good. But you end the game fighting Thor. You don't kill him. Odin kills him. But up to that point, awesome. The fight with Odin, you do like a multi-stage fight with Odin. It was okay. Not nearly as cool as I think it was with Thor. They do some cool things with the very last section of the fight with Odin, but it feels very strange because they do something with oh sorry they do something with the fight with Odin. They do something in a weird fucking shitty fight with Odin where it's like, oh, we're gonna take time to like they do the evil like character plan where it's like, oh, we're gonna announce all of our things to you and then give you a chance for escape. They do that kind of shit once they have Odin like on the ropes about to kill him. So yeah, so they do this thing at the end where they have to choose like they give fucking Atreus this opportunity to be like, hey, you have to choose one of us, Odin or Kratos, and then of course he chooses Kratos. And there was like pause there. He does that, and then they do like a final fight, and they kill Odin. They don't actually kill Odin. I think this was actually kind of interesting. I did like this. He takes out Odin's soul, puts him into like a little marble, which is what they did with the giants, and then he gives him to Freya, and then Freya chooses, and Freya says, it's not mine to choose. And Freya gives it back to Atreus, and Atreus is like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do. And then fucking Sindri comes out of nowhere, fucking takes it, and just fucking smashes the shit out of it and kills him. And it's like, holy shit, okay. I like that because it felt like a very real moment in the sense of like when writing a story, you don't really think about just having this angry character that's kind of like he's a main character, but more of like a side main character, just coming and killing the final guy and then just leaving. Like literally saying, fuck you, killing him and then leaving. Like, holy shit. Yeah. So last 10%, a little rushed. Some of the scenes felt very ham-fisted, very like very strong. But overall, great game. I'm now going to finally play Elden Ring, and that's where we're going to decide because that's what's coming down to. Everyone, we all know it's this. We all know it's coming down to either one of those two winning game of the year. Personally, right now, from what I know about Elden Ring, I would definitely say get God of War because God of War has a more not mainstream, but a more like appealing story aspect to it that I understand. I haven't played Elden Ring. I haven't watched a lot of Elden Ring because I want to go into it somewhat blind. But that's where I'm leaning right now. But that's because I just played it. So fantastic game, better than 2018 with both mechanics, so combat and story. I think it's all better. And yeah, that's where I'm gonna leave it. I spent a lot longer talking about this game than I thought I would. But yeah, I'm gonna stop there and hope you guys all enjoyed. Play the game. Go play it. Do it.